Welcome to the last cast segment. This is our post-show wrap-up for the Outdoor Line radio show. We mentioned it on the show today. We're going to talk about Inglin's stick weight system for float fishing on the river here. Duane, you brought in your nice float rod. And the stick weight system, can you talk about that a little bit for steelhead fishing? A lot of guys are going to be steelhead fishing when the rivers drop in here soon. This is a great way to hit the river and fish bait under a float.
Okay, so I'm using a 9.5 foot 6 to 15 Lammy. Okay, excellent choice.
Certified Pro.
Certified Pro. Okay. Works great as a float rod. You like that 9.5 footer, especially if you're bank fishing, because it works so well for bank fishing.
Is that about a 3000 series Daiwa reel on there?
Sure, it is. Anyway, so we're talking float fishing, but. And this isn't anything new. I didn't create this type of technique or method, but I feel like I refined it and put a combination of gear together that works very, very well. We're talking float drifting, or if we're in the drift boat, or even a sled, we're bobber dogging or float dogging, right? And we're fishing them. For me, I like to fish them out in front of my drift boat, especially when the water drops and it gets low and clear. I fish those floats out in front. We get the presentation through the water before the boat disturbs where the fish are lying, all right? Now, we're a long ways from that, so what you're going to have when these rivers drop, you're going to have high water, you're going to have fish tucked into the edges because they don't like to lay in the fast current, and if you side drift, even out of a drift boat, you're constantly having to cast under the brush and try to creep that thing along, and it always is going to pendulum out behind the boat, and you got to recast.
You get that belly in your line, it's going to pull your stuff out.
Yeah, pulls it out of there, right? Yeah. So I like to rely on my float dogging or float drifting technique because I can cast it up in there. Now what you're doing is I run braided line on my float rods.
I wanted to ask you about this too. You've got, what is this, 30-pound braid?
This is 25-pound floor clear.
And then you've got braid underneath it.
Yeah.
30-pound braid with about 30 feet of floor
I go with 20 feet.
Okay.
20 feet of floor clear.
This is a top shot.
It's kind of like a tippet, right? I call it my tippet because
top shot.
Cinch knot it to my braid, and then I actually run my float on this piece of mono. And it does a couple of things. When you're float fishing, you want basically your line above water to be above water, so you use braid. And the nice thing about this piece here is that generally the majority of it is going to sync with your terminal tackle, which works really good because mono sinks. So you have that dividing area where you have line that floats, line that sinks, and it works very well together. I put a stopper, and I like to use those little rubber stoppers on this mono because if you try to tie those Acron little strings on here, it slips on mono, so don't use that. Use those little rubber.
The only problem I have with those, I can't see them.
Well, that's
the nice thing about your bead, you can see it when you got that bead on there.
Well, so I do. Yeah, I put the bead on there to stop against the stopper so I can see that my line has pulled all the way through, and I know for certain that I'm fishing the depth I need to be fishing. Right?
Now this is a Bomac float. That's a 5/8 ounce Bomac.
Yes, 5/8 ounce Bomac. Now I put that stopper bead, or that stopper little rubber stop, about 7 to 8 feet from the weight. Okay, I'm not fishing suspended. This is engineered, or this is designed that this weight is going to drag on the bottom. Now, again, nothing new, nothing different. A lot of guys run floats. A lot of guys run slinkies, stick lead, lead snapped into rubber surgical tubing, drop shot weights with a little swivel on the top. For years, I used the drop shot weights that you find for bass and walleye fishing. And they have that little swivel on the top, and I thought, well, that'll work really well because it'll roll and tumble and won't get hung up as much. But what I found is that it hangs up as much as everything else,
if
right?
not more. Yeah.
The biggest enemy you have when trying to present this to where it's going to fish effectively is you want that constant state of movement, natural presentation, natural current speed. Presentations that stop and go do not trigger naturally fish to respond to. So, and what happens when you use other types of weights and your float's moving down river and then it sinks, and then you got to pop the top of your rod and then it moves down river 10 more feet and it sinks. You spend all day trying to keep that weight off the bottom.
And you never feel a bite. I mean, you might miss a bite. You don't know if it's hanging up at the bottom, if you got a fish going on there.
And it's stop and go all day long, and it's frustrating, and it doesn't work effectively because it doesn't have this nice constant movement. So, our buddy Bill introduced me to the stick weight.
Yeah, Bill Herzog showed me this probably 10 years ago, and I logged it. I got a bunch of this stuff put together, and I thought, okay, I'll mess around with that later. And I didn't use it until you came on board here about a year ago and said, you know what, check this out. I've seen you use this. It's phenomenal. We float fished. We fished the Wainucci one day last year. I was burning through some gear. Well, we did float fish. We didn't lose a lot of gear, but I tell you what, I lost about 5 times more gear than you did.
Yeah.
This thing, you use the same weight all day without hanging up.
Yeah, I did. Now for summer when the streams are really low, I'll cut this in half. I can tell you because people always ask, so I went ahead and checked it out. I put this on a little digital scale. This is a piece of 35,000 spinner wire. It's about 5.5 inches long, and I cut the 1/8 inch hollow core lead to length, bend the end over, crimp it so it stays on there. This weighs about 0.42.
Well, how long is that?
That's about 5 inches, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
more of a length thing because guys aren't gonna weigh it on their little scale, but you know, 5-6 inches long.
You
pretty
actually
good to go.
Yeah. I mean, you cut your weight to the. Don't cut your spinner wire down. You buy these in a pre-packaged 35 thousandths diameter spinner wire, pre-made. You get 10 to a pack for a couple bucks. And then you get your 1/8 inch hollow core lead, and you cut them to length, slide them on, bend the end over and crimp it, and they stay on really well. And more times than not, you end up fishing that thing all day because you just don't lose
I've seen it. It really works.
If you do get hung up, it's because the hooks are getting into the grass and the debris and the wood, all right? So
normally you wouldn't fish any flotation with your bait. Okay, you might even use
suspended, right?
You might use a cheater weight to get that bait down. You actually want a little buoyancy on that. You've got a cheater on there.
I do.
So it floats the bait up a little bit because that's dragging on the bottom. You can actually you want that stuff to be up just a little bit off the bottom.
It's drift fishing.
And not dragging.
Right, it's drift fishing. You need a little buoyancy. Now I run this with eggs, and it works really well. Another great option to use is yarnies.
Yeah.
You put a little scent, a little oil on your yarnies, and you just float drift yarnies all day long. Don't have to worry about baiting up. And steelhead, you know, they love yarnies. So yarnies work great with this particular rig up. I just think it's so effective because of the constant state of movement, you know, and it just doesn't hang up. And again, if you do hang up now, we're talking steelhead. So once again, 30-pound braid, 20 or 25-pound floor clear tippet, and then if you notice, this is only about a 20-inch leader, 22-inch leader, which keeps it down the strike zone. 15-pound test at least. If I go out to the coast, I'll bump this up to 20.
Especially if you're bank fishing.
Yeah.
You want to bump that up a little bit, and you know, at least 15 to 17 pound on the leader.
We're not leader shy. We're not talking gin clear. We're talking steely green water. Get yourself some good strong leader material or line. 15-pound test at least. I'm just running little number 4. Mustad number 4s, or you know, if I go out to the coast and want to, you know, bump that up a little bit because those
number
fish are big fish. Yeah.
Even if you're fishing yarnies, you want a number 2 in there with your yarnie.
So pretty straightforward.
The nice thing about this, you know, with gear's getting pretty expensive nowadays. You go out bank fishing, you don't want to lose a bunch of gear. You're not going to lose much gear with this. You can buy a couple of these setups, a couple packages of 10. You might be good to go for the whole season if you're careful. You know, if you're not casting in the wood and into the
Here's what you're going to lose right here. You're going to break this off. Make sure however you upscale your rig, that your leader is your break point. It's always, you know, 2 to 5 pounds less of what you're fishing on your tippet or your braid line. That way when you do get hung up, because it's not going to be the stick weight, it's going to be your hooks, and that's going to break off for you, and that's an easy re-rig, and you're right back to fishing. So again, you know, it's really nothing new, but the combination of 5/8 ounce float with the stick weight, which you have to make, you can't buy these. And we got that little how-to video also on how to make them. I wrote a blog. You can find my blog in the Outdoor Line webpage and the forums, and or on the blog page, and it's going to tell you exactly how to make this, what to buy, where to get it, the whole thing. And I tell you, if you spend this winter run season giving this a go, whether you're on the bank or in the boat, you're gonna see how useful it is. You know, for bank fishing, if you're trying to learn to fish and the jig thing isn't working for you, and you want to go to bait or yarnies, drift fishing this. It has so many good applications that work for you. Strike indicator, right? You can lengthen your drift. You can.
I was just going to say that. Usually, if you're drift fishing, you're swinging. You might be able to free spool down a little ways, but this you can really extend your drift.
And you can cover more water.
And you can, less casting. You can carpet bomb a hole pretty quick. Move on to the next spot if there's nothing there. So there's a great way to put some more steelhead on the bank or in the boat when the rivers come down. We've got some pretty high water conditions this next week.
We do.
But I tell you what, by the 7th to the 10th or so, the Northwest River Forecast Center is predicting that the rivers are going to fall back into shape again. Try this setup, get out and catch some steelhead. For Rob Ensley, Duane Inglin, it's been the Last Cast video segment from theoutdoorland.com. Thanks for watching.